Right, good day, everybody, and welcome to the class on areas of compound shapes. Now, what a compound shape is, imagine if you just take, it's pretty much like the semicircle logo. If you just take a bunch of simple shapes and you put them together to make a more complex shape, right? So, in order to calculate the area of compound shapes, we should just remind ourselves as to what the areas of simple shapes are, right? So, let's look at some simple shapes. So, we have the area of a square, which is side by side or side squared. The area of a rectangle being length times the width, or basically side by side anyway. The area of a triangle, this is the most popular area of a triangle formula that we use. But just be careful, it is a half times the base times the perpendicular height. So just be really, really careful about that. It's always the perpendicular height of whatever triangle that you're using, right? The area of a circle being pi times the radius squared. The area of a parallelogram being base times the perpendicular height as well, so be careful about that one. And then the area of a trapezium being a half the sum of the parallel sides times the height. So those are some of the basic areas that you should know. And from this, we could create a lot of compound shapes. So let's check out the first one here. We have this compound shape. And what we should try to do is try to split it up into smaller, simpler shapes. And how we do that is by drawing either vertical lines or horizontal lines, right? So let's try to draw a vertical line. And you see, if I draw a vertical line, I now have two rectangles, right? So it's easier for me to find the area of both of these rectangles now. And the line that I just drew is actually the same 2 centimeters of which is the side of that particular rectangle. So this 2 centimeters over here and this 2 centimeters over here is the same thing, right? And then so we could see here that on this side we have 9 centimeters, which means that this entire length here is also going to be 9 centimeters because this is a rectangle, right? So if this is 9 and this is 2, then we could actually find what is the remaining length, which is this length, which is 9 minus 2, 7. So you could see by splitting it up into simpler shapes and just kind of using a little bit of logic, we could find what the missing sides are, right? So essentially now we have to remember that this side up here, this entire length here, is also 10 centimeters because that's the length of this. So we could recognize this as being sort of a rectangle of its own, right? So since this is 10 centimeters and we have over here being 6 centimeters, then we could work out that this piece here is going to be 4, 10 minus 6, right? So now that we have all of the sides, we could go ahead and try to find the area of this compound shape. So we can see here that we have 2 rectangles. This is the rectangle A. And the area of the rectangle A is 9 times 4. You can see we worked out that side to be 4. Right? So 9 times 4, which is 36 centimeters squared. So just remember, for area, the unit is always squared, right? We have this rectangle B. So this rectangle B is the area is 6 times 2, which is 12 centimeters squared. And so all we need to do now, basically add the areas of both of the rectangles, and that gives us 48 centimeters squared. So this is how we find the area of a compound shape, and this is one example. I'll just give you this other example here, and how about you pause the video right now and take a minute and see if you could do this one on your own. Okay, so hopefully you pause the video. Right, so we can see here that this entire length is 25 because this here on this side is 25, right? So because of that now, this remaining length here will be 25 minus 5 minus this 5 over here, right? And that essentially leaves us with 20 meters for that shorter length here. So now we could draw that horizontal line and we could see that we have two rectangles, A and B. And we could find the area of rectangle A by 20 times 5, giving us 100 meters squared this time. So the units are very important, right? The area of rectangle B being 20 times 4, being 80 meters squared. You see the 4 over here and the 20, so this is rectangle B. And so we just add these areas up to give us the total area of this compound shape, right? So compound shapes not really that tough. You just kind of have to look at it and see if you could figure out the missing sides. You'll always have all of the information that you need though, and you do need to know your areas of simple shapes, right? Okay, so how about you try to figure out this one? You could pause the video for a minute. Right, so hopefully you got it, right? Let's see how it works. I could see here that I have a larger rectangle. And that larger rectangle has an area of 13 times 7, which gives us 91 meters squared, right? Then I have the middle rectangle. And that rectangle there, the area of that gives us 1 times 4, which is 4 meters squared, right? Now you can see the middle rectangle is actually a space. It's like a hole, you know? So we have to kind of minus that smaller rectangle from the bigger rectangle. And when we minus it, it gives us a total of 87 meters squared. So in terms of how to add the areas or how to minus the areas, it depends on the shape that we have, right? So let's check another example here now, and this one is a little bit more of a complex example. Take a minute, see if you could figure it out. So let's see what's going on here. Firstly, we could see that this length here is 6 centimeters. That is the radius of the semicircle. And we could tell that the shape is essentially, if I had a rectangle and I were to minus a semicircle, right? So this 6 centimeters is the radius of the semicircle, which would mean that this length on that side would be 12 centimeters, the radius times 2, right? Which gives us the diameter of the semicircle. So now we could find the area of the larger rectangle, and that would be 17 times 12, 204 centimeters squared. And then we could find the area of the circle. We have the radius being 6. So the area of the circle, the full circle, with a radius of 6 centimeters, pi r squared, which is pi times 6 squared, it gives us 113.04 centimeters squared. Right? Now that's the area of the full circle. And you know we have to minus it, but we don't have to minus the area of the full circle. We have to minus the area of the semicircle, half of that. So let's find half of the area of that circle, and that gives us 56.52, you could see here. And this is actually the area of the semicircle that we are going to subtract. So now we could subtract the area of the rectangle minus the area of the semicircle, and that gives us 147.48 centimeters squared. Right? So that was basically it for the class on compound shapes. Just as a summary, you should know your areas of simple shapes. Or when you're dealing with a compound shape, try to split it up into simpler shapes. And how we do that is by drawing the vertical and the horizontal lines, right? So here we have some links for some worksheets, and I will leave these worksheets and these links in the comments, so you could click on them and do some questions and get some practice. Have a good day.